a lot of people would be shocked, if they saw the real numbers.
What is it that 99% of filmmakers don't understand about distribution?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I think, distribution is hard because you don't, as a filmmaker who hasn't come from this business, you don't have a lot of information available to you in terms of, it's not like the stock market where you can just really look through the financials of companies and see what's happening and get real case studies of individual films that are just like yours and how they've done. Because I think a lot of people would be shocked, if they saw the real numbers. If you had a list of every movie that was made last year, what kind of distribution it got, what kind of sales it had, and where they're sitting right now, you would probably be shocked because so many of the films just don't get meaningful distribution. And so I think, everyone, I think the 99%, they think they're different. Like their film is different, their story's different, and they have the one that's going to break through. And that's what drives dreamers. I mean, that's great. And they, some of them will break through. Some of them will make a film that just becomes one of the unicorns and blows up. But a lot of people assume that they are making a unicorn, and they haven't really put the work into exploring distribution and the actual financial models and how things work and what the sales numbers are realistic for their film, so that they go out and they just kind of blindly go in and make the film and then hope, making a film and then hoping that you get distribution is not a great plan. You have to really plan from the get-go, because you can design a film, whether it's with your cast. I mean, that's the number one thing everyone looks for now, is cast. All the distributors, it's the first thing they ask. I have distributors who say, don't send me anything without cast. That's all we want is something with names. And then they say, well, what kind of names? And I say, well, I consider a name anybody that you don't have to describe who they are. You just say their name. And if you say their name and people know who that is, that's a name, right? So, if you have to say, oh, they're the, third lead on a show on Hulu or whatever, that to me is not quite a name yet. So I think most filmmakers don't really get that, and they don't understand that you can make impact by tweaking your cast and tweaking your budget level and the story and different things to really add up to a much more commercial film when it's done, and something that buyers will actually want to pick up. But I think they all come from this place of the big dream, the Hollywood dream of making a great movie and going to Sundance and getting it picked up, and occasionally that works out for people, and most of the time it doesn't. And so I think they just aren't super realistic in terms of the plot, and part of that is because they don't have the data and the information of all the case studies of all these other films.
Do you think, too, some of these filmmakers do actually make a beautiful film, but they're making it for other filmmakers who are looking at it with a different lens, not the general public on their couch, sort of with the remote in their hands, choosing?
Well, I think there's different, people make films for different reasons. So some people will set out to make an artistic film that they know is not super commercial, and that's fine. There's a place in it. It's art. So, not every piece of art is going to appeal to every person. And if they have the finances to put that together, and they can make something, they can make it for one person to see. They make a movie that very few people are going to watch, but for them it's enough, because they're doing art and they've got this expression they want to make. But for other people, most of the people want to get broader distribution. They want to get their money back. They want to have a chance to make another film and pay back their investors and get money for the next film. And that's I'd say 85% of the people, if not more, come from that kind of stretch. But as soon as they get their money to go make it, they typically are just so focused on making the movie. They want to make the best movie they can possibly make, and we'll worry about distribution later. So let's go make it, then we'll get it, and then we'll bring it to someone like Zach and say, here, look at the movie we made. And sometimes I look at it and say, great, wow, this is going to do really well. And then other times I look at it and say, wow, boy, did you make the wrong movie, for right now. Or you spent way too much on this, the market won't support it. And Now with all the new technologies and everything, budgets can come down a lot, and so I think there's going to be even more films coming out there. So maybe you will be making movies for much smaller audiences, but the budgets will be fractions of what they are now. So, but I encourage people to if they have a gnawing thing in their gut to go make a film, to try it, and to try to make a film. And I encourage people not to just make short films, but to make features, because if you can make a feature, if you can make a short, I think you can make a feature. You're almost there. It's a little bit more money, but a feature is much better. It has some marketability. You can sell it. The old kind of plan, oh, I'll make a short to prove the concept and then make a feature, it just rarely happens that way.
Yeah, no, because I was just wondering, just because especially being in LA or let's say New York or someplace that's more of one of these sort of hub cities where these people are artists and they're making them for other artists,
right?
And everybody that's there loves it, but the general public that's voting with their views maybe less so, and a lot of people don't want to make a Christmas film. I know they're very popular. The wedding planning genre, weddings,
yeah,
that's very popular too, but not everybody wants to make that.
Yeah, and I think everybody has their lane. I have lanes, there's certain types of films I don't like. There's certain films I like a lot more than other people do. But I think anytime you're making a film, if your goal is to make back the money, you have to consider the audience at the end of the day. Who's going to watch this? How am I going to get it to those people? And how am I going to get them to pay for it so that I can get the money back? So if you're not, you can go out and just make a film and just know I'm throwing this money away, but I'm going to create a great piece of art, and then it doesn't matter how many people watch it. But most people, I think, really need to say, like, okay, I'm going to make this great film, but what do I do after? Like, how do I get this out to these people who would enjoy it? Because now you have massive audiences on certain platforms, AVOD platforms like Tubi and Amazon and Pluto, where you have 100 million monthly users. So there is almost someone for every film there, but it's like you've got to find a way to get it to them, and you've got to find a way to signal to them that this is one that they would like. So in that case, you use tricks, artwork and trailers and meta tagging and different things like that to identify that. But I think you really, like anything you create, if you're trying to make it commercial, you need to consider, okay, who's the audience, who's the customer that I'm trying to reach, and then factor that into the content that you're making.
And wouldn't you say most filmmakers, they the main part of it is to make their money back? This is not just a tax write-off for most people.
Yeah, I mean, most people, like I said, it's probably 90% of the people are really about they want to get their money back, they want to get exposure. But there are other people who are just starting out, and I've had pretty honest conversations with people who've told me, listen, I am just trying to build my resume and build my career, and I'm not as concerned about getting the money back. I've got a rich uncle or whatever it is, he's fine with it, if I don't make the money back. So I really want to do, I'd rather be with like a named distributor than, a better offer from an unknown, or do a different strategy because, I want to build my career and I want to be associated with a bigger distributor on this film. Or, I want to go to as many film festivals as I can because I just want to meet people and network and try to find investors for my next film. So everybody has different reasons for making film, but, I'd say most of the people I talk to, 90% are saying, like, we really want to try to get this money back and make another film. It's tricky because a lot of them, they're torn because they want to make the movie they want to make. They don't want to lose money for whoever's funding it. But at the same time, they want to help their careers. So, and I've had people be like, just blatantly, I don't care if the money comes back to the investor. I really am focused on getting my next job as a director, and I want to, push this into the right circles and do what I need to do to get that. And, depending on the situation, that can work.
Thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. Here is a complimentary question from our book Story Questions.